Jackie Cohen-Roth, founder and CEO of Cannabis MD. Welcome to CBMD Video Profile with Hannah Deacon, who is a incredible advocate for medical cannabis via personal experiences with her son that I'll be talking about shortly. Hannah is based in the UK, and I believe it's fair and correct to say that if not for your advocacy, medical cannabis would not be recognized in the UK. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm quite humble, but I think, yeah, definitely
Yeah.
our campaign started off what I would call a patient revolution in the UK, which I'm very happy about. There's still a long way to go, though, unfortunately.
Okay. So a bit of a background, and then I'll cede to you. So this is a really incredible story. As Alfie was having seizures at 8 months old, which progressively got worse with age. The only treatment, well, he was diagnosed, I'm sorry, with PCDH19 at age 5. The only treatment that worked for him were IV steroids, which incredibly powerful medications. He was having up to 25 doses a month by the time he was 5, as his condition was progressively getting worse. IV steroids are extremely dangerous to give on a regular long-term basis. After researching alternative treatments for epilepsy, Hannah, along with her family, took Alfie to Holland in 2017 to be treated by a pediatric neurologist with medical cannabis as a last-ditch attempt to save his life. And we'll just pause there. And we are in the U.S., where of course I'm based. Here in the U.K. is that we have the need is lessened, but still there are medical refugees that are moving from state to state. You actually moved from another country and uprooted your family of 4, which is very significant. So please, share your story.
Yeah, firstly, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on, Jackie. I've followed you, and I know I've met you last year in Malta, and
Right.
it's very inspiring to be around such amazing women. So thank you very much for
Oh,
having
absolutely. Back at you. Thank you.
me. Yeah, as I say, Alfie was having one cluster of seizures. PCDH19 epilepsy causes a clustering representation of seizures. So he wasn't seizing every day, but he was having hundreds of seizures. They would always start at night. So very frightening for us, because you're fast asleep and you're hearing this huge tonic-clonic screaming seizure. And we basically spent the whole of 2016 going into hospital. So 48 times in 1 year, I or his dad took him into hospital in an ambulance, holding him down, shoving needles into him. I mean, it was just horrendous. And doctors were just saying to us, we don't know about this condition.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what to do other than give him intravenous steroids, because that's what works. And so he was either in that state where he was having hundreds of seizures, or he was at home and he was basically high on the pharmaceuticals, very severely affected by all the seizures he'd had. And he was very aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
My partner's 6'3". He used to play rugby. I just kept thinking, my son is going to be 6'3" one day and he's going to hurt me. And he was already hurting me. He was wanting to be with me all the time, because obviously he felt terrible, but he would scratch me. He was very sensory, scratch me, punch me, kick me, scream for no reason. I mean, it was just awful. There was no quality of life. And I was very lucky that I just decided to fight. I mean, at the end of 2016, I felt very much like I didn't want to fight anymore. I didn't want to live. I had a daughter who was at the time 2, which was, and I breastfed her till she was 2.5. So I was, it was very, very difficult. And I just didn't really want to carry on. And I just thought, I've got to fight, because I don't want to live like this anymore. And doctors aren't helping me. I actually am his expert. I know more about his condition and more about the way he is than anyone I know. So I need to trust me as his mother. And that took a long time. I think probably every mother who's watching this will identify with the fact that when you have a baby, you feel like everyone knows better than you. And actually what you have to remember is that you know better than anyone. That's your baby.
I've gone through that experience. I mean, I have raised 3 daughters, and actually, to feel just a tiny bit of what you went through. But my oldest daughter presented with night terror, so had no idea, completely frightened of what those were all about. And then, interestingly enough, when she was a teenager, started to present with auras, which were related to concussion, but that, there is nothing like a mother as the most powerful advocate for your child. And to go to physicians and be diminished, being called mother, no, 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 we've got this. Well, no, you don't. No,
Yeah.
you don't. And
Yeah,
don't
exactly.
let up. So
Yeah.
I just
No, I completely
thought,
identify with that. And I'm very careful not to, I don't want to be sitting here slagging off doctors,
oh,
absolutely
absolutely.
not,
Yeah.
because, I have had some really good experiences with doctors, but I would say on the whole, when Alfie first went into hospital before, when we didn't know what was going on, when we went from being a normal family with a little baby into this hell of
Right.
watching our child nearly die, I felt like I wasn't part of the decision-making process, nor was his dad. Absolutely what you were saying, we've got this, just let us do what we can do. Like he wasn't my baby anymore. And that is something, that I talk about a lot when I can, when I do interviews in the UK, is that this isn't just about medical cannabis. This is about parents being part of the decision-making process. This is about us being respected, especially when it's very easy when it's a very easy, straightforward, diagnosable condition. But a lot of these things, as you say with your daughter, it's unknown. And actually, as parents, we know better than anyone, and we should be heard and we should be part of that conversation. And I do think doctors are getting better at it, but there's still many that are not. I mean, Alfie's old neurologist, when I spoke to him about medical cannabis, he actually said to me, if you talk to me about cannabis again, I will ask social services to come and visit you. And Alfie was in hospital having hundreds of seizures a week at that time.
Yeah, and that
So
is also wanted to like to make the point is that when children are seizuring, and the power of finding that when it does work at medical cannabis is that it's impacting everybody else in the family. It's not just taking care of Alfie. Those seizures were impacting, as you said, your 2-year-old, when what was going on with your life at
yeah,
that time, the
absolutely.
relationship with your partner. So it's not just about that child.
No, absolutely not. It's a ripple effect. I was a full-time carer. My partner was, has his own business. He was working all the hours that that he could to keep a roof above our head. I was earning £60 a week as a full-time carer, which is what the going rate is in the UK, and it's absolutely nothing. You can't live on that.
Right.
I was literally up all night looking after my child if he was having seizures, and then awake all day. I had no quality of life, and nor did my children. And I couldn't leave my son alone with Annie, for example, because he would hurt her. That is no way to live. And unfortunately, we had to fight for everything that, we didn't even have a social worker at that point. We didn't have a social worker till we got back from Holland. We have to fight for everything. And I feel very angry about that as parents who have chronically ill children that, we didn't ask for this. We haven't done anything wrong. It's just one of those awful things that happens. We should be taken care of, and we're not. And I think that's why parents do what they do, like fight for treatments for their children, because if they sit back and wait, they're going to be waiting a long time because you don't get help. You don't get help, and it's very sad.
Right. So let's dial back to medical cannabis and being recognized in the UK and in the journey that you've gone through and with the NHS. So again, NHS being a countrywide, the health system in
Yeah.
the UK.
Yeah.
Certainly challenges with accessing medical cannabis. Different in the US where the operative word is prescribe versus in the US it's recommend. So I want to touch upon that. And then Epidiolex, which was recognized by the NHS and was it
NICE.
pardon me?
NICE is the National Institute of Clinical Excellence, and they are who review medicines, whether they are cost effective and whether there's enough evidence that they should be licensed. And in November last year, they said that Epidiolex should be available to certain numbers of children with certain conditions. So very, very narrow
Right. Okay, so
recommendation.
the trajectory, the timeline of Alfie presented you are on your path, and with Epidiolex. So Epidiolex was in trial, I believe, at the time that when you
Yes, yeah, we asked to be part of that trial in the end of 2016, and Alfie was rejected for the trial because he didn't have Dravet or LGS epilepsy. And at that point, that's when I said to my neurologist, well, you know, what about going abroad? What about using, you know, I was desperate. We were desperate. And he said, oh, you know, if you talk to me about that again, you know, you can't go on the Epidiolex trial. Well, I'm going to get social services involved. And I said, well, I'm not going to use black market products. I just want to try it, because what was driving me is the fear of my child dying. And that's basically what I was told, you know, he could die. And I don't want to bury my child knowing that there could have been something in the world that could have helped him to be well. I mean, that's just something, a guilt I don't want to have to ever live. So I just thought, well, fine, you know, we found another neurologist who was actually very, very good at a different hospital. And in July 2017, he had Alfie in for a month to try and stop him having, because at that point, by the time he was 5, he was having these clusters every week. They were just progressively getting worse and worse. He tried immunoglobulins and they didn't work. So he just said, yeah, he's steroid responsive. There's nothing we can do. And luckily I said to him, what about if I take Alfie to Holland with a pediatric neurologist, with the support of you, would you prescribe it on the NHS if it works? And he was actually brilliant and said, yes, I think you should go. And he was brilliant. And September 2017, that's when we went. And it was, you know, it was terrifying to move. What I would have liked to have done is gone to America or Canada, but I couldn't afford that. I didn't, you know, definitely couldn't have afforded that. We couldn't have afforded to pay the emergency health care fees that he would have needed initially. So that's why we went to Holland, because at the time we were part of the EU, which meant that we get reciprocal emergency care. So I knew that if Alfie didn't respond for the first couple of months, that we had that ability to stay there and not have to worry about money, basically.
I didn't realize that affected Brexit.
Yeah. Yeah, the B word. That's
I'm sorry. So
yeah, I'm very, very, it's very sad, I think, very sad. But there we go.
No,
that's another interview for another time.
Right. So you're in Holland, and
we went to Holland, and we went and lived in The Hague, and we saw our neurologist, and she prescribed Bedroolite, which is a high CBD, low THC oil. It's very, very thick black cannabis oil. It smells like cannabis. It's as close, I suppose, to the plant as you can get.
Like similar to RSO, Rick Simpson oil here?
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, it has other cannabinoids and terpenes, and yeah, it's very, very, very good whole plant tincture, basically. And she prescribed Bedroolite. We started on 30 milligrams a day, and then we moved up every week.
And I'm sorry, how frequently were you dosing?
Twice a day. So he was on 15 milligrams twice a day. And then every week we went up by 30 milligrams. So we went really, really slowly.
Right.
And it's something that I talk to parents about all the time, because they're very used to anti-epileptic medication that you can just, you know, bang in quite quickly and get results quite quickly. But with medical cannabis, it is better, you know, in my experience, to go very slowly and work up, because actually you can miss your sweet spot if you're not careful.
Exactly.
And reverse the good that you're trying to do. So yeah, it was hard. It took 6 weeks to get a positive result in Alfie, but then he went 17 days with no seizures, which was like a miracle.
Stopped the pharmaceutical during that time? Had you stopped the pharmaceutical?
No, he was on a very low dose of Epilim and a very low dose of clobazam, because we'd weaned them right down, because actually he seemed to be worse on antiepileptics. He got very severe side effects from antiepileptics, very violent, aggressive, and he was still having hundreds of seizures every week. It just wasn't, and we had been through lots and lots of antiepileptics. We'd had immunoglobulins, we tried the ketogenic diet, he had the VNS. You know, we'd done everything. But no, the neurologist said, don't touch anything, don't change any of his medication, just add the Bedroolite in and let's just see. And then if he starts to get better, we can slowly wean that a bit more. But he has got very severe refractory epilepsy, and he does remain on an antiepileptic to this day. And it's something, again, I'm very clear about, because I think it's really important not to sort of make people think it's this miracle that if you start medical cannabis you'll never need another pharmaceutical again. It isn't like that for children with refractory epilepsy, and actually not for many people with chronic illness. It's an adjunctive therapy, a very good adjunctive therapy.
Right. And how about the impact? I mean, certainly beginning with the steroids, on his development, and then with the anti-epileptic medicines, where is he on the progression of his physical and mental development?
Yeah, I mean, basically, he has PCDH19 does come with mild to severe learning delay anyway,
Mm-hmm.
the AC that, and also mild to severe behavior problems. So, Alfie, before he was on medical cannabis, could probably say 2 or 3 words in a sentence. He could do one action. So, if you said to him, go and pick that cup up, he probably could just about do it. This is when he was 6, if you repeated yourself. And now his cognitive development has leaped. I mean, he couldn't ride a bike before we went to Holland. He had a little bike with stabilizers, and he used to sit on the bike and pedal backwards. And it used to break my heart, because I just thought, if every little boy needs to know how to ride a bike. It's just a pleasure of being a child.
Right.
And we literally got back from Holland, and he sat on his bike and he rode it.
Oh,
and that,
it
was just,
sobbing?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I would have.
All I can say is, before we went to Holland, we lived on a road with a little school at the end of the road, and I used to sit and watch the mums and dads take their kids to school, and I used to cry. I just wanted to be one of those mums, I just want to be a normal mum. I want to take my kids to school and just work. I couldn't work, I couldn't socialize, I couldn't be part of society, I couldn't pay my taxes, I couldn't do anything to make me feel like I was worth something.
Right.
I was sitting at home being beaten up by my child every day, worrying about when the next seizures would come, and that's what medical cannabis did for us. It gave him freedom, it gave me freedom, it gave our family joy and happiness. And I think I have possibly been a bit criticized before that I've said it was a miracle for us, but it was a miracle. Miracles are relative. And for us, we spent our lives in hospital watching our child suffer,
right.
Something you wouldn't put an animal through, the things he went through. And then suddenly he got to interact with his sister, he got to learn new things, I got to go back to work, his dad and I got to go for dinner sometimes. It was just amazing, life-changing, absolutely life-changing. And that's what sort of took me on this journey to want to help other people, because I know what it's like, and it's hard and it's difficult. And actually, if there's a plant-based medicine that can make people's lives change like that, then everyone should have the right to use it.
Right, and access to it. And so then why did you leave Holland?
Well, we were there for 5 months. Alfie went from having, big clusters of seizures every week to 41 days with no seizures at all. And when he did have a cluster, he maybe had 10 seizures, 1 dose of steroids, and we were home within 12 hours. So what the cannabis seemed to do as well is, when he did have seizures, just reduce the impact of them. He wasn't having hundreds, he wasn't using loads of pharmaceuticals. They responded much quicker to medication.
Did you ever supplement with any other dosing method while he was seizuring that?
No, I didn't, to be honest. I have, in the past, since we've been home, when he has had seizures, rubbed it onto the soles of his feet or in his gums and things like that. And again, I think that helps to, because he's very, very well known. He has very big stretches of seizure freedom, but he will always have seizures. It's not a cure, and so yeah, we do sometimes use that. And I have learnt a lot from other parents. See, I read a lot and I learn a lot and speak to doctors, and there's so much to learn. And again, in the UK, doctors are just beginning to prescribe, but they really have so much to learn,
Right.
So yeah, we after 5 months, Alfie just became a lot better, and we decided that we needed to have a prescription on the NHS. We didn't want to stay in Holland forever. And we're very lucky in the UK. We have a healthcare system which is free at the point of delivery, where all our medication and all our services within reason are free. Paid for by our taxes, which is an amazing service. And I think we all take it very much for granted in the UK and think everyone's the same, and they're really not. So we wanted that prescription on the NHS. We asked our doctor at the trust in the UK to prescribe. He said he would, and he'd apply for a schedule, because it was a Schedule 1 at the time, so he'd have to apply for a Schedule 1 license to prescribe. And he was told by his trust he wasn't allowed to help us, and that he couldn't do it. And he actually phoned us up at Christmas, just before we came home from Holland, pretty much in tears, saying, "I'm really sorry, I'm not allowed to do it." So that was a taster and a beginning of, oh, okay, cannabis doesn't fit into the NHS. So what we decided to do, we were running out of money. We actually fundraised all the money to get to Holland. So we were running out of money. We decided to take Alfie off the medication and come home and fight our fight in the UK. And that was a really, really, really difficult decision to make, obviously, because he was doing so well. And pretty much within 2 days of getting home, he was in hospital again in the UK having seizures, which made me very angry, as you can imagine. We were very lucky that we met a campaign group called End Our Pain. They're a lobby group on medical cannabis in London. And we met with the people that run that, and they said that they would manage our campaign. You know, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew that I needed to get to the media, I needed to get to the government, I needed them to allow my doctor to prescribe on the NHS. But I didn't know how to do that. I've never done an interview in my life. I've never, you know, gone on television or anything. So they helped me do that. And my first interview was in February 2018, where I went on to a big daytime TV program on the BBC and just talked about my experience with Alfie. And we were then very lucky to meet the Prime Minister 3 weeks later, because we were getting a lot of media were very interested in it. I had a really big petition on change.org of over 800,000 people supporting us, and she allowed our doctor, we then had our GP and a private doctor to apply for a license through the Home Office. And we did that, and that took 3 months. And then Alfie was issued with the first, Alfie's doctors were issued with the first Schedule 1 license ever in the UK to prescribe, and he had an NHS prescription in June 2018. So it went from, in March 2018, the Home Office said there is no medicinal value to cannabis in its raw form, and we will not allow it, to June 2018, me getting Alfie's license.
That's incredible. So, yeah. And
so
then how accessible is medical cannabis now in the UK for patients?
Well, sadly, not through the NHS. Alfie has a prescription on the NHS, and so does one other child in Northern Ireland called Sophia Gibson. She also worked with End Our Pain, and they very quickly got her prescription after Alfie's. There was a panel set up. The Home Office said there should be a review into cannabis after Alfie's license was issued, and the Chief Medical Officer said that there was good evidence for epilepsy, pain and spasticity, and I think it was MS as well. So that review basically was concluded. So they then said they'd reschedule cannabis from 1 to 2 on the 1st of November 2018, and I was ecstatic, you know, and other parents that were all fighting for this change as well. We were all very, very happy that we've been part of such a historical event. Absolutely. The reality is as soon as the law changed, NICE started their review. Also, the British Paediatric Neurology Association issued guidance which said that medicines with THC should not be prescribed due to the fact that they can damage the growing brain, which I'm yet to still see that clinical trial. Makes me very angry, because the BPNA, the chair of the BPNA, was also the lead on the Epidiolex trial. So as far as I'm concerned, that is not impartial advice. Yeah. So that makes parents like me very angry, because it's not right that sort of advice should not be coming from a membership society. And then unfortunately, NICE also dismissed all evidence unless it was randomized control. So obviously the only evidence that is randomized control in cannabinoids is from GW Pharmaceuticals, which meant that they did endorse Sativex for MS and spasms, and they did endorse Epidiolex for Dravet's and LGS, which is a very small amount of children with epilepsy. So they say there's not enough evidence to prescribe whole plant cannabis. They don't actually say in their guidance that you can't do it. They say if a doctor feels there is enough evidence that they can prescribe if they so wish, but obviously a hospital trust, which is so terrified of litigation, will not allow their doctors to prescribe because they're terrified that it would go wrong. What I find, so to answer your question, there is no access on the NHS. There is private prescriptions. There's nearly 2,000 private prescriptions in the UK now. So there's about 4 or 5 clinics that have been set up. So there's, people can access it privately, but you're looking at Bedroolite for a child with epilepsy costing anything up to £2,000 a month. which is impossible. People can't afford to pay that.
Yeah.
And they're having to fundraise. You know, this is people with refractory epileptic children who are having to fundraise to pay for their medicine to keep them out of hospital, which is saving the NHS hundreds of thousands of pounds. So it's absolute nonsense. The other thing I would say as well is that a lot of medicines our children are given, and actually other children are given every single day, have no randomized control data behind them. They're prescribed off label. So yes, there is data in adults, but that doesn't mean that it's safe in children.
No, it's a totally different,
it's complete hypocrisy.
It's not
so I just, you know.
Yeah, and you know, and there are studies. Again, we don't have access, or they don't exist. These in the States, the FDA double-blind placebo gold standard. Absolutely, there is consideration of THC and the impact of the developing brain. But if it is, you know, you balance that with what is the impact of Alfie being on significant, or any child, steroids.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly. And what's the impact of having thousands of seizures a month?
Exactly.
And you know, or benzodiazepines, which they seem to you know, prescribe like Smarties to babies, you know, which do actually cause organic brain malformations if you give them long term. So you're absolutely right. I'm not saying that, you know, THC is safe, you know, for everyone. It probably isn't, and you must dose it with high CBD to counteract the side effects. But as you say, if you've got a child with refractory epilepsy, which has the chance of passing away from what's happening to them, surely, you know, using something like that is worth the risk. Absolutely, because their brain is going to be damaged anyway. So,
I mean, it's such an incredible, powerful statement to have to say and to recognize. Let's shift a little bit. So with your advocacy work and what you are focused on now, we've recently shared the screen with another organization focused on physician education. And particularly, so what are you doing in the UK? And I've, you know, leading into your work with an association that you've helped establish, which has some really fantastic literature and information for both the provider and the patient on there. So if you'd share some of that. And
I helped set up an organisation called the Medical Cannabis Clinician Society with Professor Mike Barnes. So Professor Mike Barnes is the doctor that helped me, or actually did all the paperwork for the Home Office and got Alfie's licence. So I'm forever grateful to him. And he feels passionately, as I do, that doctor education is one way of moving this conversation forward. You know, members of Parliament definitely need education. I recently got an email from a member of the cabinet in the UK saying that cannabis is scientifically proven to harm mental and physical health and destroy communities, which for me says that there's a real lack of education.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the same in the States. And I had a conversation with a policy influencer. We were talking exactly this, is that how little the people that are creating laws and how little they know. And
exactly.
It's not right.
No, it's not right. And again, you know, for me, it goes back to the patient. And I, you know, that's how I feel my work now is to remind everyone in this sector, whether they be doctors, MPs, investment bankers, anyone, why are you doing this? Why does it matter? Well, it matters because you're dealing with patients, you're dealing with children, you're dealing with families. And I sometimes think that gets lost in the melee of this sector. And I think we have to remember that's what we're doing this for people, to give them easier and better and more fulfilling lives. And that's where I'm coming from. I'm that person that, you know, I want to be the voice, or I try to be the voice for all the people in this country that have no voice, that aren't able to stand on the platform like I am. So we help set up the Medical Cannabis Clinician Society basically for that, to train clinicians and allied health workers. And we provide education through webinars. We were doing roadshows, face-to-face roadshows, but obviously they are no longer at the moment, but we do webinars regularly. We have a peer support group so doctors can converse about the prescriptions they want to write and what people's thoughts are, which is a really important tool as well, because people feel, you know, there's about 27 prescribing doctors in the UK at the moment. I should think for them it's a bit of a bit of a frightening road to go on, to say, actually, I think this is the right thing to do, but probably go against the rest of your many of your colleagues who don't think it's a good thing to do. So we're trying to provide that support group, the society, you know, so we can make people feel empowered. And what I feel is we can't expect people to prescribe, but what I would like to see is them learn and then choose not to, rather than say, right, I've read the Daily Mail and we're all going to get psychotic, because that's, you know, that's just nonsense and that's just sensationalism. Right. Learn about it and then say, it's not for me. That's fine, but right, learn about it.
Education is paramount. And to remove the stigma, and how can you make an educated decision on patient care without the education behind it?
Exactly. And we also have a patient committee as well, because again, that's one thing that's really important for me, is that we are always listening to patients, what they need, how they feel, how they feel that we can best communicate with doctors, because it's really something that needs to change, this them and us, which is going on at the moment. And one thing my dad said to me when my son got very poorly at first is, he said, just remember, doctors aren't gods, they're people. And it's so true. And I think we have to get rid of this God complex. They're professional people like we all are, doing a job, and sometimes they don't know things and they need to say, I don't know, and they need to find out about it, rather than, you know, sort of rising above all of us. And that's sometimes how we feel, and it's not nice.
Yeah, and applause to those 27 physicians who are brave.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, so the availability of your product, so is it being imported?
Yes, at the moment, there's no high THC licenses that have been issued from the Home Office in the UK. They are being applied for, we know that. There are hemp licenses for growing hemp, but there's nothing for high THC. I know some people, sorry?
What's the forecast in the UK for?
I think the problem is, at the moment, is the Home Office and the MHRA are finding their feet with it. So I know they're working with some organisations who are looking at research licenses to start with. Mm-hmm. So at the moment, the sector is very small. I would like to see a UK sector, because I think that it will bring jobs and tax and you know, infrastructure, and we need this sector, especially after COVID and the billions that we've been spending on track and trace and all the things that haven't worked for us. We need to be recouping that money. So I feel strongly, but obviously our weather isn't great, so there's going to be a lot of money that will need to be invested into greenhouses and things like that. But yeah,
indoor green, the indoor grow houses, and those. Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that. I want that to happen, because at the moment we are importing from Holland, Israel, Australia, Canada. So prices are very high, and it doesn't need to, I mean, I think we should still be importing products, but I think we should also be really pushing for a good, robust UK sector, because we have had supply issues over the COVID time, you know, with planes and struggling to get product. And that's been very, very stressful for a lot of organisations, very, very stressful for patients. You know, so if we can get a really good quality product that's supplied safely to people that's much cheaper. I mean, there's no reason why anyone should be paying £180 for 1,000 milligrams of CBD. It's madness. It's too much money, and we need to bring the price down. I would like to see NHS prescriptions, of course, but I think that's going to take time. What I would like NICE to do is, instead of trying to force cannabis down a pharmaceutical road, I'd like them to say, okay, this isn't a pharmaceutical, this is a plant, this is a botanical. Let's look at all the studies, because actually, if you look at PubMed, there's over 40,000 citations. There are studies, there's lots of studies, they're just not randomized control. And I don't think that means that we don't know about it. I just think they need to change the way they think about this medicine. But I think that's going to take a long time. So we will see a boom in the private sector, unfortunately, first, I think.
Yeah, and then of course in the illicit market, but similarly in the U.S. is looking at it as a Schedule 1 now. And when will the scheduling change? What will it look like? Should it be classified? Should cannabis be classified as a botanical? but again, that's another conversation.
Well, I know, and that's the thing, and I know there's so many people with so many differing views, and I think that also depends your background. For me, being the parent of a patient, I have a different view to, say, someone who is in this industry for commercial gain, or whatever. I think, and I think it really does, your opinion on where it should lie depends on who you work for and your experiences in your life and all that sort of thing. But I just feel like we don't need to make it so difficult. We need to make it safe, of course, but as we've said before, a lot of the drugs that my child has been given have been so dangerous.
Yes.
For me, I just don't understand. I don't understand this sort of fear about, cannabis isn't a medicine and we've got to pharmaceuticalize it and make it safe. Well, actually, it's not safe. A lot of drugs that my child has been given are not safe. We don't know the long-term impacts of them. Whilst we need to do more research, why we need to understand more about cannabis, we know enough to be prescribing it and to be doing observational data, for example, and following people's the way they react to it. And the families that I know have private prescriptions, they must be saving the NHS hundreds of thousands of pounds at the moment because their children aren't going into hospital, and that should be taken into consideration as well.
Savings measures for the NHS, and of course that impacts the citizens as well. So it's that
definitely.
What is on your agenda? Your advocacy work and educating physicians. So what's next for you, or what are you doing now?
Yeah, I also run a company called Maple Tree Cannabis Consultants with Professor Mike Barnes, and the reason behind that is that we used to get asked a lot from lots of different people, to startups to major LPs, what do patients want, what strains can we be growing, how can we develop, how can we get product into the country, all that sort of thing. So we decided to join together and have lots of fun, which we do, but also try and help the UK establish a really good sector. I don't want this to be a place where people are overcharged. I don't want this to be a place where it's not clear the products they're using. It's one of my big bugbears as well, is that a lot of these products, you don't know what's in them. They're not labeled properly. You don't know,
Yeah, and those are the safety standards that we do have in the legal market in the US, with the lab testing and along the production cycle from grow to processing before it gets to the patient. And so I would think, yeah, absolutely, that's scary. Is the products that you're getting, are they what
and we say to companies, is this whole plant? Oh yes, it's whole plant. And then we have it tested and no, it's not whole plant. So for me, I'm now carrying on advocating for people. It's the 2-year anniversary on the 1st of November this year, which we're going to be doing some work around and trying to get the media. It's very difficult at the moment with COVID. That takes up everyone's attention at the moment, but it's still a really important story. And I want to develop a really good, robust UK sector which allows access to everyone who needs it safely. That's the most important thing. And I hopefully will achieve that. And I'm very happy to have, what I would say is something that is so negative, so sad, so much grief has brought so much positivity to my life. I've met some amazingly inspiring people. I've learned so much. I've learned so much about myself. And I think I feel very blessed every day that I can be doing something that I love so much, and very lucky to have a little boy who on the whole is very well. I'm very lucky.
I'm so delighted. I have goosebumps. Yeah, and I did see if you would share then the URLs about these organizations, and that there is Medical Cannabis Awareness Week, November 1 through November 8 in the UK.
Yes, yeah. Medical Cannabis Awareness Week is being run by an organisation called PLE, and I can't remember the website, but I'm sure if you Google PLE, you'll be able to. There's lots of webinars and education on their website for that week. The Medical Cannabis Clinician Society is ukmccs.org, and that is open to everyone. We realised actually that this sort of organisation isn't available. We assumed it would be available all over the world, these sorts of membership societies, and they're not. So we do have members from Canada, we have members from Portugal and Spain. So everyone's welcome. So allied health workers as well, please come to our website and join us. And my consultancy firm is mapletreeconsultants.co.uk. Again, you can find us there, and I'm on Twitter, which I'm Hannah Seizure Mum on Twitter.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, Jackie.
Doing for patients across the globe. It's having impact.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much for having me, and I'm really inspired by talking to you and following your work as well. So thank you. It's nice to have other women to look up to in this sector, because we're few and far between.
We are few and far between, and there is, again, I think with women in this industry is the advocacy and being mothers, and that the impact that it has had on our of access to cannabis.
Yeah. It's one thing I remind, actually, to end on, it's one thing I remind a lot of men that I meet in this sector, is that you have to remember that who makes the decisions in the home? It's the women.
Right.
Listen to me, because I know what women want. You don't.
On that note, sister, we'll sign off. All right, thank you, Hannah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.